Welcome to the Get Out In It podcast, keeping our mental and physical well-being balanced by heading out into nature and doing stuff.
The activity isn't important. Walk, run, hike, bike, whatever it is, just find something you enjoy and get out in it. The point of this podcast is to show how ordinary people can achieve extraordinary levels of health and fitness.
Out here, we'll share informal, inclusive advice for anyone trying to improve their mental and physical well-being, based on our own experiences and professional knowledge from our special guests.
So let's lace up and get out in it.
And here we are. Welcome to episode 18, and what a week it has been. How are you, Maria Herring?
I'm very well, I'm very well, James Whale. How are you?
James Whale? James Whale.
I forgot how to say your name.
Oh, brilliant. Yeah, I'm very good, thank you. I'm very, very good indeed, actually. It's, is this the second podcast we've recorded in Devon?
It is, yeah. We did one last week and we're doing one this week.
Well, here we are. Yeah, it's been a good week. Everything's going in the right direction. And I think the most important question I've got for you right now is what have you done this week to get out in it?
Got out in it. It's been a good week for getting out in it. On Saturday, I did my first ever park run.
How was it?
It was brilliant. It was the park run in Woolacombe, and it was it was a nice run along the beach, but I didn't like the sand dune, the Dune of Doom. That was tough.
Yeah, the Dune of Doom was quite the moment, wasn't it? I decided to join you for this park run. So, I mean, let's just have what have you done this week to get out? And it's the same thing.
Yeah.
Because I did the park run with you. Injury-related rehab start park run. But the June was a nippy moment, wasn't it?
It was a little bastard, yeah.
It really was, yeah. But we got through it. And what was your first ever park run time?
My first ever park run time was 32 minutes and 3 seconds.
Well done. And this is the UK's third hardest park run in terms of elevation and environmental conditions.
Yeah, so I decided that I smashed it.
I think you did indeed.
But you sub-30'd.
Yeah, 21:37. 29:30.
Mate.
29:31. Which is not too bad. It's also my first ever park run, and I'm injured, so I was limping along a fair amount. But I had some old friends there pushing me on that I wanted to beat, so I did that. I just didn't beat Jeffrey.
What a bastard!
What a bastard!
But one of the what did you do this week to get out in it moments I had that you didn't have was on the Sunday. I did a 15-kilometre coastal run from Woolacombe to Ilfracombe.
You did indeed. I dropped you in Woolacombe, didn't I? And then you ran all along the North Devon coastal path back to the small seaside town of Ilfracombe. And what a stunning coast that is. It
was gorgeous. It was brutal. In my brain, I was like, a coastal path, that's going to be flat. Because I was thinking, along the sand and all that jazz. No. It was very cliffy. And I did quite a lot of climbing and descending. And it was a brutal climb, but it was absolutely glorious.
Indeed. I know I'm a bit biased because I'm from North Devon, but I don't think there is a coastline in the world that rivals the beauty, magnificence and brutality of the North Devon coast.
Yeah, it's pretty spectacular. Yeah. So that was another fun getting out in it moment I had this week. But I think all the rest we've shared, huh?
Yeah, and also there's been a lot of running and me on bikes, rehabbing my hip. Talking of rehab, our guest is very interesting on that topic this week, isn't she?
Oh, it's going to be a really good hike and a chat this week. I've been looking forward to speaking to Daisy for ages now. So this is going to be a good one.
Should we do it?
Let's do it!
Getting into it. This week, we're lucky enough to be joined by Daisy Peters. Daisy is a sports therapy and injury rehabilitation specialist with focus on strength, performance and rehab. Daisy practices out of NL Fitness and Mount Kelly in Tavistock and has recently been helping everyone's favourite podcaster and sports agent get over a hip injury, which I'm sure is the first time our audience has heard of that. Daisy, great to have you along. How's things?
Very well, thank you. Thanks for having me. Yeah,
Lovely
nice
to
to
see
be
you,
here.
yeah.
So as always, first question of the podcast has to be, what have you done this week to get out in it?
I'm in the middle of training for an ultra, so I'm out most days at the moment. This week, to get out in it, yesterday I had a 60-minute easy session in the woods local to here with a dog, which was lovely. Yeah, really nice. So
You live really close to me.
yeah.
And it wasn't until 3 months ago now, I reckon, that I came to you for help with my hip, that I knew you existed. So I've got a feeling you train stupid o'clock in the morning, don't you?
I
must
do.
I've never, because you
Yeah.
tell me you do all these runs near my house. I've never seen you.
And I've always noticed the car, and I've gone, I wonder who lives there. And then it was you. I do. So I've got, my daughter's 7. My husband goes out to work at very, very early. So usually my training hours are sort of 5 a.m., 6 a.m., something like that. Which in the summer is really, really lovely. And when it's warm, which it hasn't been, but when it's warm, it's a good time to get out, get it done. So that's why you won't have seen me.
It's one of those things, isn't it? As soon as you know someone exists, I'm sure I'm going to see you everywhere.
See, yeah. Well, and you said you think you broke your ankle outside my house, basically.
Yeah, I did. And somebody poked their head out of the door and said, do you need any help? Or do you need an ambulance? I'm assuming that wasn't you.
That wasn't me. I'd like to think I would have done a bit more.
So, as I said in the intro, you're a specialist in injury rehabilitation and you focus on strength training as well. What got you into that field of work?
It's a really simple answer, actually. Being injured myself. So I've run for years since school, kind of the standard story. Also, I'm a climber, always been really sporty. And then mainly after I had my daughter, I got injured a lot. I just couldn't really understand it, and I saw various different osteopaths, physios, sports therapists, and I always found that I had a real interest into why these injuries were happening and what I could do about them. And it went from there, really. And I looked at what courses were suitable, and I thought about physiotherapy. I often get called a physio, and it just wasn't, the NHS route wasn't the route that I wanted to go down. I really wanted to work with sports injuries and have a clearer picture of why they happen to people and what we could do about it. And that's kind of where it began. So I did a sports therapy and injury rehab degree, and the rest is history, as they say.
So what's the difference between that and physio then?
Yeah, so that's quite a common question that I get. So I spent 3 years studying sports injuries, rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, fitness analysis, all those different areas of sport. Physios cover such an incredible range, because you can get cardiac physios, neurophysios, speech physios, respiratory physios. So they have to, in their 3 years, they do all of those areas, bit of sport as well, and then they go and have to do some NHS rounds. And then after that, they can become specialists in the field. So it's a slightly more sort of clinical route, I would say, whereas I was very much in the sort of practical injuries, rehabilitation, strength and conditioning, that kind of thing. So it's a slightly more direct route.
That's interesting. So I always thought physio really was just for sports.
No, yeah, and there are so many different types of physios. You then have to specialise after your NHS rounds, I believe. I know that there's been a slight change since COVID. I can't say I'm an expert in what they do, but most of the people that are sports physios have acquired kind of extra courses and things to get to that stage.
And where is your main, have you specialised within that specialism? Where is your main clientele base coming from? Is there a specific sport you focus on, or do you just see anybody, and where do you get these people from?
So I as with anybody starting out with their own business, I think you see anyone and everyone. I started when I was still at uni and qualified in sports massage. I was just seeing everybody that wanted sports massage, and I think you tend to lean towards things that interest you and things that I felt passionate about, and that was endurance sports and extreme sports. So from that, I tended to sort of, and because of the people I hang around with, runners definitely make up a huge part of my clientele. They're always injured as well. And then cyclists tend to see more mountain bikers and ultra endurance cyclists, which is cool. They're amazing people. And climbers are another bunch that tend to get injured quite a lot. I think I found I wanted to cover so many areas, but you have to let some go, really, because there's so much to each sport. So it definitely helps. I've always found it helps to be able to relate to the client, to their injuries, to their interests. I have a much better working relationship with people who I can relate to, and I think they respond better to me if they know that I understand what they're kind of going through. So yeah, where I find them is often events or word of mouth. As I said, I work at this gym in Tavistock, which they tend to get a lot of runners and cyclists, and then they filter through to me. Nice. And Mount Kelly, I do work with a lot of swimmers because Mount Kelly has an elite swim pathway.
Okay.
They're teenagers at the school generally, so we work. Esther and I work with a lot of swimmers there. But most people, as soon as they become sort of injured from any type of endurance sport, they tend to get sent my way, which is great.
Nice.
So I think we should start with a sort of a synopsis of the evolution of thinking around injury rehabilitation, injury prevention, injury rehabilitation, how to look after yourself when you're doing endurance sports, extreme sports, stuff like that. Because obviously I started training in the mid to late 90s. Thinking was very different back then. You
Definitely.
threw out a few static stretches before you started and a few static stretches when you finished, and job done. There wasn't much of an emphasis on strength. There wasn't much of an emphasis on prehab. What has changed over the years, and where are we now in terms of that thinking?
Yeah, I think that's a great point to start with, and it's like you say, it is the evolution of thinking. We'll have this conversation now, and if we had it again in 3 years' time, it would probably be different again. And I think the key thing is to just be open to continue to keep changing with the science and what we find. So, like you say, it was always static stretching before and after, job done. If you got injured, rest, ice, compression, elevation for 10 days, and when it stops hurting, when the swelling's gone down, get back to it. What we know now, much more than before, is that injuries are hugely multifactorial. There you have to consider so many aspects of the whole person, not just the injury itself, but you have to kind of dig into their lives a little bit more. So prehab and rehab can be quite complex in that way. Some generic rules to follow, I think, from an endurance point of view, the biggest cause of injury usually is too much too soon for your body. Whatever that might look like, whether you're a recreational amateur athlete or even an elite athlete, there will be, at some point, there will have been some level of overload for that area if we're talking about non-traumatic injuries. So I think variety to training is key. Runners run too much, cyclists cycle too much.
We do, yes.
Yeah. And so on. So I'm a big advocate of making sure there's variety in training. And that's definitely evolved, and that's supported by science. We get people cross-training. And that has been forming for quite a while, that idea now. But actually, rather than a rest day activity, doing it as a sort of an addition to your training. So making sure that if, for example, if you're a runner and you quite like getting on the bike, then get on the bike to cover some miles that week, and strength training. and anyone that knows me will roll their eyes as I start talking about strength training.
I think maybe any runner in the world.
Any runner in the world, yeah.
Oh, it's my bugbear.
Maria rolls her eyes at me constantly for my obsession with strength training and my belief that it's probably the fountain of youth.
Like, I get it. I totally understand. And I do believe James and you and everybody else who said you've got to do some strength training in your weekly training schedule. I do get it, because you want to strengthen those muscles, especially if you're doing long distances like we are for ultra marathons. So, like, intellectually, I get it. But, like, it's just dull.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that's the biggest problem. It's dull for a lot of people. People don't like gyms.
No.
Totally fine. I also can understand that. And there's a common misconception it will make you bulky. There's a small group of athletes who can get away with not doing it, and they're quite public about the fact that they don't do, and they're quite successful with that for now. But it's key to longevity in the sport.
Why?
Yeah, because we have
Tell us why, Daisy.
So again, it comes down to that variety and mixing up your training each week. If we ask the same thing of our bodies all the time, we're not providing this progressive overload, which is what encourages us to grow, keeps all our soft tissues strong, tendons, ligaments, bones as well. Hugely important for women in particular is bone health. Especially as we age.
And I am currently perimenopausal,
so it's really important. Yeah, really important. But the other reason is this high resistance, low intensity type training, which is strength-based work. And it doesn't mean that you have to go into the gym and squat with a barbell 60 kilos to get that response. Actually, it could be, for you, it might be doing some controlled sit to stand type movements, some forward lunges, some just some press ups, things like that are just a different type of training to what you're normally doing. And it's exposing your body to these different stresses and different types of load and constantly keeping it guessing. So if we keep mixing up what we're doing, your body will have to adapt and change, and that's one way to keep it really healthy.
Oh, that's really interesting. So it doesn't have to be weights. You can just use your body.
No,
body weight
you could use your body, and once what you might find to start with is 6 press-ups might be really challenging. Standard 6 press-ups might be really challenging. As you become stronger over the course of, say, 4 weeks, 6 press-ups will become easy. So instead of then adding weight to that, what we could do is mix up the tempo. So you would go, I'll do 6 press-ups, but at the bottom of every press-up, I would hold it for 3 seconds and then press back up. Because you're increasing the time under tension, the body's time under tension. Each muscle wants to be loaded. So muscle is so important for health. It's an endocrine organ, so hormonally it's massively important for our long-term health, not just for physical performance and injury rehabilitation. So, but it's that low intensity compared to running, even if you're running slowly or it's an easy run, it's still a high impact, high intensity sport compared to strength-based work.
Yeah, because I do not during the holidays, because everything stops in the holidays, but during term time I also have I do yoga once a week, and I have a friend in France who is a sports instructor, and he does these like HIIT and conditioning classes once a week. So would that count as strength and conditioning sessions?
Yes,
nice.
Definitely.
Awesome.
So you are it's strength looks different to everybody, and the biggest injury prevention advice I think I would give is that there isn't a one-size-fits-all approach. James, you like being in the gym and lifting weights and heavy deadlifting. I'm the same, and it's been revolutionary for me and my training. And I will prioritize it 3 times a week. But for a lot of people, it might be a small band in their living room while the kids have gone, or when the kids have gone to bed, 20 minutes, and that would be enough to start with. The key is this progressive overload, and by that I mean that each week there is a little bit extra an extra stimulus that you're providing your body with. And at that boot camp, it might look like you pick up, if there is weight, I pick up a slightly heavier weight, or you do a couple more extra repetitions. Our bodies are incredible at adapting.
Yeah.
So you need to keep providing that extra stimulus. It's the equivalent, you know, with a marathon training or any type of training, you do a 13-mile run and then you do a 14-mile run the week after and a 15-mile.
It's the same idea.
It's the same idea, the
That's
same principles for training.
I tend to say to you, don't I, that the strength training is important because when you're out running, you're using your muscles and you're training your cardiovascular system. When you're using the strength training, you're preparing your muscles for when you run.
Yes.
They're there for you to be used, so that when you are putting that multiples of your own body weight through your muscles every time your foot hits the ground, those muscles are, you know, being stimulated and strong enough to take that load. And it's
quite, people are always quite shocked when I say that when you run, anywhere sort of from upwards of sort of 6 to 8 times your body weight can go through each leg in load.
That's a lot.
And that, you know, and that will change depending on your size, depending on the terrain, uphill, downhill. And you have to prepare for that. You know, we are built to run. When, you know, we're a species that are able to run and run for really, really long distances, but we can do it for longer and with less pain if we put a few things in place. And especially, you know, the modern world and life as it is now isn't as active as it was, so we have to be a little bit more on it with our sort of extra work around running.
We sit downy,
exactly. And you think you spend, you know, 9 to 5 sitting down, everything tightens right up, shortens, and then you go, oh, okay, it's right, I'll just go and do a, you know, hours interval session and expect everything to just suddenly bounce back. It's not quite as simple as that. And so I think, sorry, digress slightly, but when we look at some pointers that people could take away, there's a big buzzword is activation work as well at the moment. A lot of people will talk about prehab being activation, you know, glute activation, hamstring activation.
Yeah, you say those things.
Buzzwords, yeah. And actually, all that means is you're preparing your body for what's about to happen. We all have dominant muscle groups that will, you know, propel us forward when we're running and help with braking when we're running downhill and things like that. And sometimes there are certain areas that don't work as hard as they should do or don't work in unison with the bigger muscle groups. Glutes get a lot of blame for a lot of things, and hip flexors and calves can be quite weak for people as well. So it's worth having an assessment to find out what your area is.
Calf raises are important, aren't they?
Calf raises are very important.
I hate calf raises with a passion.
That's usually a sign that you need to do them. The more people curse and exercise in the gym, the more I go, okay, this is where we need to.
I have got massive calves though, haven't I?
You've just got very short legs.
Very short legs.
Yeah. It's very easy to get complacent though, isn't it? Because even though and you get into your own groove, even though I know how important gym work is and I do it, I got into a groove of doing my own compound exercises 3 times a week, you know, and I enjoy that. Yeah. What I had neglected a lot of in the last couple of years was more single leg sort of stability work, which I think has led to me getting a hip injury.
Which we discussed.
Why did I get injured, Daisy?
Well, it's funny you should say that, James, because I remember a conversation in the clinic, and hopefully I can share this with your permission.
Yeah, feel free.
Where you were saying, you know, I strength train, I'm strong, I do the right things, and we talked about what type of strength training you did, and like you say, it was very much the compound lifts. You were squatting, you were deadlifting, you were bench pressing, hip thrust,
squat, deadlift, calf raise. They were pretty much my 4 go-to every week, and then a bit of upper body work. But I don't particularly need the upper body. It was more for vanity than anything.
Very important also. There has to be some kind of, and that's, you know, as compound movements, they are brilliant. And they make up a huge basis of a lot of people's strength work. But as a runner, you're basically jumping from one leg to the other. So you have to improve that single leg strength. Not only that, but the single leg work will help to improve those compound exercises. And the reason I would say why you got injured is actually you were overloading those specific muscle groups in a very, very compound way, very closed chain, and not including enough variety actually in your training. And that over time, I think, coupled with the fact we discussed that you had an ankle break to the other leg, which often for a long time will mean you're on crutches and loading extra onto the other side, which can just set up the sort of the very foundations that there might be a bit of overload through that side. And then you come back to running and you will have not really wanted to, especially if you haven't done any single leg work for the rehab for the ankle, your body's incredibly clever at protecting a certain area, and it will have protected that ankle and sent you over to the other side.
Suddenly I'm overloading the other
other side. Well, and you will have been, because if you were on crutches, all that leg is doing all the support, and then you're trying to come back into this trying to evenly load both sides, and it just doesn't happen. The way that would have happened is if we'd put in split squats like we've got now, single leg work in all sorts of different varieties. We would have looked at high repetitions, low and slow to increase strength. We would have looked at some plyometrics, some explosive work, and all of that would have prepared your body. And it also would have highlighted to us where the imbalances lay. And then you would put in those smaller exercises, the banded glute work. It might be some upper body work as well, because it is all connected. We're often very sort of black and white about upper body, lower body, not connected. It's like the belly button is a line. These two things we're just stuck together. There's nothing. But actually, it's hugely important in the way that, you know, from a running point of view, how you move your arms will affect how your legs move and how the rest of your body moves. So we can't neglect the upper body. And even from vanity purposes, you know, if you were doing upper body from vanity, great, because you were actually loading it anyway. So I feel that although you were ticking all the right boxes on paper, we were actually not looking at the weaknesses underneath, which could have come from previous injury. And running movement patterns are also really interesting for seeing how people are moving. And over time, you will have just overloaded through that hip, and that's when the tendon starts to grumble.
Yeah, and it did start to grumble. Things are getting better now, as our listeners have heard, week in, week out. Things are improving. The single leg work is a dramatic indicator for me of that, because not only are you're actually doing the exercise, but it's a real metric to how stable that part of your body is, because I've noticed a huge improvement in my ability to single leg deadlift, you know, or to do the split squats without the shaking and the unbalances. So things are improving quickly. It's something I wish that I'd incorporated into my sort of warm up for my compound exercises for years now, but I haven't. So I've just got to work from where I am. When someone because my hip niggle started 2 weeks before the Bristol Half Marathon. And then I went and ran the Bristol Half Marathon on that niggle, thinking I can do 15, 14K and it's okay, it just aches a bit. And I ran it at your pace to get you your first sub 2. And I thought, yeah, that'd be right, easy. It wasn't, it just went nuclear. So talking from a perspective of any runner out there or any athlete who's listening to this with a niggle, how do you approach that? What do you do if something starts to ache and you're not sure what it's going to turn into or what it can happen to it?
Yeah, that's again a really good question, and it's a tricky one, because anybody that has run or pushed their bodies on a regular basis will have had aches and pains, and some of that is delayed onset muscle soreness, DOMS also known as, from working hard, which is fine, and that's a normal ache,
and it's a nice pain,
and it's a nice pain. Yeah, exactly. You'd get more of them from strength training. So you know that's quite, it will go in 24-48 hours. That is generally a pretty good indicator for us as to whether or not something is gonna stick around. So the key things that I generally would look for, for myself, that I think about, and what me and other colleagues tend to ask is does it keep coming up in the same way? So, you know, you might start running 2 miles in, there it is again. It's there, it's a dull ache, it's not really going anywhere. So, and it kind of stays, but then you stop running, goes away, you forget about it, run again, there it's there. And, you know, it might present on every run. It might present on every run, disappear, tendons generally, or a tendon issue will warm up and feel a bit better, then come back again as you start to fatigue. That would be another indicator that it's more than just an ache, a sort of a training niggle. Obviously, acute pain, shooting, sharp, that for me would sort of ring alarm bells, and I would get that checked, you know, quite quickly. Just because, you know, it can, there are lots of overuse and stress-related injuries that are not worth running through. And so there is a sort of quite a good general rule of the pain scale, which we use for rehab as well. A 4 out of 10 usually means that something's uncomfortable. There's quite an awareness there of it, whether it's in your hip or your calf. It doesn't get any worse during, straight after, or 24 hours after and onwards. There isn't an increase in pain or discomfort. If hopefully it goes down, that's what we would look for. If anything does increase above that, and again, like I said, becomes sharp shooting during, after, 24 hours after, then it's likely to be an injury that needs some attention. Some people use a rule of, if it sticks around for longer than two, some old school physios push it out for 3 weeks, that would be worth getting looked at. I think
you'd always recommend someone goes and speaks to a specialist and doesn't just consult Dr. Google.
Yeah. So I think, to be honest, it's worth, and obviously I would say this, but I think it's worth people having MOTs on your body. You know, it can be every 4 weeks. You know, that's not affordable for some people. 6, 8 weeks even. Touching base with even a sports massage therapist or a sports therapist or a physio is really worth doing, because it will just keep you on top of your body. They'll know what's normal for you by feel, even if you go for a sports massage regularly, that, you know, they'll go, oh, this right calf is not very happy, let's have a look at what's going on there. And it would just flag up things before they become problematic. I think the biggest concern for most people when they get a niggle, especially if you're training for something, is that if you go and see someone, they're going to tell you to stop running. Yeah. And again, digress slightly earlier, but we will try everything we can to not stop your training, because rest is not the answer anymore. That's one of the evolutionary things that's happened. We know the key is to keep people moving. Now, initially, that, depending on the severity of the injury, that might not look like carrying on with your training plan. It might be adapted. We might know that cycling is better, swimming is pain-free, great, we'll do them. But actually, if you come early enough, we'll find a way to make it work. And you know, we don't want you to stop running unless we feel like it's going to be really detrimental to the injury.
So let's use me as an example.
Yeah.
I come to you the week before I do the Bristol Half Marathon with this ache that I can run 14k. It's coming back every time. It's pretty painful. It's probably your 4 out of 10, 5 out of 10. You know, but it was the week after Bristol Half Marathon is when it went nuclear, and I couldn't walk, I couldn't stand up, could I? You had to help carry me to a taxi.
Yeah, it was pretty insane.
So what if I'd come to you the week before that race? You'd have obviously said, "Don't run the race. We need to sort this out." Yeah. What would you have had me doing to deal with that? What became a tendon issue in my hip flexor? So
the key thing at that point would have been to discuss your long-term goals. You know, what it was, for example, what it was that you were going for long-term, and we work backwards from that. So Bristol Half, although it was important for you to run with someone and pace them, actually that's not going to do you any good at this stage. It might have been hard to tell. At that stage we could have said, you might get through it actually, and you might be okay, but let's not risk it because of this happening the other side. we would have brought the load down. We would have chatted, okay, you can tolerate 14k. Let's stick to about 10k. We keep well within that range that's happy. We would have discussed how the pain behaves. Does it feel, based on assessment, we would have seen things that made it feel worse, movements that made it feel worse, movements that made it feel better. We then would have put some exercises in place. We would have looked at single leg things, single leg work, and then just brought your training back. But I wouldn't have stopped you running, because the long-term goal is to run. And actually, as you know from your injury, complete rest, although it will bring those initial inflammation markers down, everything's super angry and red and kicking off because you've taken it to that stage. It's not helpful, because tendons in particular don't have huge amounts of blood supply. So a muscle is very vascular. There's a lot of blood. If you get a muscle tear, a minor tear, it will heal quite quickly because we'll get lots of blood flow. There's lots of blood flow to it. Massage will help, heat, all those kind of things. Tendons are really thick collagen fibers, so they don't stretch very well, and they don't get much blood supply. So actually, by stopping loading them, you're reducing that blood supply even more, and they really, really stiffen up. And so what we would look at, again, is finding load that you could tolerate. And that's the key thing with tendons, is what can you tolerate during, straight after, and 24 hours later. And then then you give a little bit more each time. And then probably would have found that you were back up to a fairly decent level without too much hassle.
So there was a way around this without it getting to the point it had got.
Yes.
The week before that race, if I'd done something differently, if I hadn't done that race and I come to speak to you, I could have avoided this injury entirely, really, with a little bit of work and thought.
It would have been a lesser stage of tendon nuclear aggravation, I would say. And we could have put some things. I mean, hindsight is a great thing, and I think I'm also a huge believer, having worked with a lot of people and been injured myself, in how much we can learn and take away from injuries. They do happen for a reason. They are teaching us something about our bodies, and moving forward from this, you will have so much in your arsenal of, your toolbox of how to run well and long, that will be really beneficial for you for, you probably won't get this type of injury ever again.
I will never stop doing single leg work ever again. Ever again.
But my advice generally, I do think, if you're ever unsure, if it feels like a niggle, just go and get it looked at. We much prefer seeing people when it's a niggle, even if you book the appointment and then you get the appointment a week later and you go, oh, well, last week it was painful, but actually this week it's okay. Yeah. That's fine. We can probably still assess you and find out, the reason why it was hurting won't vanish completely. The reason why your left hamstring is sore, we'll be able to assess why that's happened. We'll look at load through each leg, and actually, the more you can do, the better. If somebody comes in very, very acute, with very, very acute pain, really severe pain, there's not a huge amount it's really quite hard to assess in certain movement patterns because everything's so painful.
Yeah, I mean, I had this problem to begin with. I think I told you, didn't I? I had 3 different diagnoses to begin with, because the pain was so global. And very difficult for me to pin down as a patient. Does this hurt? Does this hurt? It was like, it all hurts. Every time you move my leg, it hurts. Yeah. And so it was difficult to pin that down.
And injuries, once they're settled down a bit, it becomes, a tendon would hurt doing this, but a capsular problem wouldn't hurt doing that. A bone problem would hurt doing this, but a soft tissue problem wouldn't hurt. We have all that kind of protocol in our heads but we can't do that if it's so angry and painful that it becomes quite hard to diagnose and treat.
You obviously see a lot of people at the point where it's got that bad? Yeah. They come in with an injury. What is it about the world as it is now, where the dissemination of knowledge is so difficult, that a lot of the public consciousness hasn't caught up with this evolution of thinking that we were talking about at the start? People still think static stretching before exercise, static stretching afterwards. What is being done, and what can we do to try and bring the public consciousness up to, a more modern way of thinking about injury rehabilitation and prevention?
Yeah, I think we're very afraid of pain that could be a whole other podcast, the pain science behind things. And I think the issue comes, with the pressures of sport, the obsession, I think, that comes with sport, and it becomes people's lifeline for a lot of things, and that is totally understandable. But it means that we're very nervous or afraid of anybody that's going to tell us that we have to stop doing things. And there are also, it's harder now because there's so much online, and there are still some very old school ways of thinking that will be like, nope, you stop, you rest, because it could be, you Google foot pain in runners and you've got a stress fracture. Guaranteed.
Yeah.
You've got a stress fracture.
The first thing I did, I mean, I know enough to know that I can't believe everything I see on Google.
Yeah.
But when I Googled my injury and what it might be and what a dull ache in a hip might be, stress fracture was the first thing that came up. So. Yeah.
And in a way, that's quite a good thing, because that is a possibility. It can, for some people that might be the case. So therefore it might stop them in their tracks and go, oh, I need to seek advice. And then they can come to us and we can rule that out. I think we need to have a better understanding of our bodies in general. And we need to stop following generic online advice, which is really hard because specialised individual advice is expensive, and it's hard to come by, and we all think we know best. So I'm not entirely sure what the answer is. Stuff like this is really good because, I think people really, my experience with people is that they love hearing other people's experience, and that they really take that on board about what works and what doesn't. But I think in the endurance sport world, there's just this harder, faster, lighter mentality still, and we're breaking through it very, very slowly. But it takes a lot more of these kind of conversations to get people to understand that actually their pain will be completely different to somebody else's pain. And like I was saying earlier, it's all multifactorial. So it's not just about that one run where the pain started. We would have to look at, maybe you're moving house at that time and your kids are having a difficult time at school, but you're also trying to train for a 100-mile race whilst working 40 hours a week, and all that will play into those injuries. So the old school way of thinking was, well, you ran up a hill too fast, so your calf tore. But actually, we know it's not really about that. We have to look really at the bigger picture. And I think if people can start to understand their own, again, it's a buzzword, but holistic approach to training and everything, and pain and everything that will go into that, then we will start to understand our bodies a lot better and prevent injuries happening.
It's really interesting because where I live in France, I have once a week I do a little hiking group with a bunch of peeps, and that's really, really good fun. Right. And at my sports in the park session, which I do as well once a week, there's a bunch of women there, and they know I do long distance running all through the hilly forests where we live. And it's really interesting how all of them are like, I would never do what you do because I don't want to hurt myself. And like there's this real kind of, it's interesting what you say about pain, because I don't want to be in pain either. I'm terrified of pain. But there are so many people who are afraid of injury, especially with something like trail running, because I suppose you are on your feet and it's hilly and you can fall and break your face. But so many people are put off from doing these really amazing sports because they are terrified of injury. Yeah. It's the one thing.
Because running's really bad for your knees, isn't it, Daisy? Isn't it? That's what I heard.
Running's bad for your knees. I can't run because of my knees. What is it about your knees?
You don't run on your knees.
Yeah. It's do you know the irony of that is those people are much more likely to be injured in their daily life from not exposing themselves to running and everything that comes with running. Balance is improved by running, and as we age we know that we lose our ability to balance as well, and runners will continue to have that ability because you're, like I said earlier, hopping from one leg to the other. You know, we continue to train that. So actually it's risk and consequence that people tend to focus on. So trail running, well, you go to these high places and you'll trip over a stone and fall down the cliff, and it's like the likelihood of that happening is, I don't want that to happen. No. So I'm going to do everything in my power to stop that happening. If you apply that mentality to everything, we would never leave the house.
We wouldn't.
But then you was also at, fires and in your house, crossing the road, you have to continue to expose yourself to these stresses, because actually for your long-term health it's the best thing that you can do.
Yeah, I do try and say this to my girlfriends, and I understand with women as well, they've all got kids as well as jobs, and they're doing what kind of sports they can, like lower impact sports that they can, to keep themselves physically healthy. And also to help their mental health a little bit. But I suppose for women perhaps it's a bit more difficult to do these long distance endurance sports because they have got the kids and the house and the job, whereas for men,
technically also got the kids and the house and the dog, and that's a societal issue, isn't it? Rather than a gendered one. That's the structure of society and how it should be, balanced in a much more equitable way.
And actually, I know in the world of endurance, especially ultra endurance sports, women are phenomenal athletes, and that there is much much less of a performance gap than in.
Almost swinging the other way now.
Definitely,
without question.
Yeah, and actually, sometimes I find all those factors, juggling kids and work and animals and whatever else they've got going on in their lives, makes them really focused. They come in with an injury, they're like, right, I need to get over this as soon as possible. Tell me what I need to do, and I will do it. And hands down, they do. Whereas sometimes, when I deal with people that think they know everything about everything, it's a lot harder or they have plenty of time to train, or they're generally the ones that are a bit harder to rehab. There was
a recent study, wasn't it, that came out, I can't remember where it was, but it showed that with the evolution of women in endurance running, they had a higher, once the hours got to a certain amount, they were ability to handle the pain better than men over that certain time period and distance, and it affected them less. Whereas we just get a bit weepy and stuff, and have to call it a day.
Bit man flu-y.
Bit man flu-y.
Interesting what you just said about people that think they know everything. When you are treating people, because of the expansion of knowledge online, do you have clients come in and they'll be like, well, actually, I think it's this, I think it's that, I think it's that. I mean, I remember when I came in to see you, I was very careful to I'm deferring to your knowledge here. You telling me what to do and we'll fix it. Do you find you have more people coming in with a sort of an idea of what they've got and inability to soak up what you know? Yeah, definitely. And every runner that maybe not, more of the sort of recreational club runners and things like that. Well, I've got knee pain because I run, or plantar fasciitis. I've had £1 for every time I heard plantar fasciitis for any type of sort of small heel pain. And it's, again, because they have Googled what this means, or somebody else has had it and they did this. So I often get people who come to us directly and say, my friend has had plantar fasciitis and they had shockwave therapy. We have a shockwave machine, which is a form of electrotherapy at Mount Kelly, and that's why I'm here for that. And you kind of say, can we do an assessment? Can we see what's going on?
No, just shockwave or dry needling, or I've read massage.
Yeah.
I've read that this helps. We'll do this, and you go, okay, come back next week. But it didn't really work. Well,
It's not shocking.
so you have to be quite patient as a physio or a sports therapist, because you have to break through. You have to let people kind of realise little by little that you do know what you're talking about. And also, one of the things I find is you have to make it relatable to them and their lives. There's no point in me giving you 25 different exercises to do 16 times a day if it's not going to happen. So you have to kind of say, okay, look, you make a cup of tea every day. Could we maybe just try doing 8 calf raises each leg at that point, or things like that? But it really helps to break down the injury in a way that people could understand it, and also, if they have decided that it's a specific diagnosis, explaining why that's not that particular injury is really helpful. Usually people are pretty good, to be honest. By the time they come and see you, they're fairly ready to get your advice and be at your disposal. But the trying to convince people into exercises is the hardest by far. Accountability for exercises.
You mean to go from a sedentary to an active lifestyle?
No, sorry, to put in the rehab.
Oh, okay.
Exercises.
Sorry, yeah. Okay. I see what you mean.
Yeah, trying to get that to, especially if it might cause some discomfort to start with.
That avoidance of pain.
And it might aggravate symptoms to a mild level, but even aggravating them a little bit.
And then people worry that it's going to get worse and worse and worse, and they're making it worse.
Yeah.
And I remember when I first came in to see you, you had me doing some single leg step-ups.
Yeah.
And the discomfort level in that was incredible.
Yeah.
But there is, so you told me, the brain can, because it's trying to protect that area, it can make that pain more intense or seem more intense. And then I'd find that the second and third single leg step-ups, it would get easier because I'd proved to my brain that I could actually do this. Where does that link come from?
Well, it like you said, it's a protective measure. That's what that link is, and and because you've avoided that specific movement for so long, that single leg step up that we were doing, it was taking the hip into close to sort of end range hip flexion, which the hip flexor tendon wasn't going to like, and then asking you to load up through it and bring it up into a sort of more of a stretch position when you're fully standing up. Those things, from our subjective assessment and chatting, I knew that your hip wasn't going to like very much. But I also was aware that the tendon needed that shorten and stretch, not end range stretch, because that would be uncomfortable. And actually, your brain for so long has gone protect, because pain is a signal that comes from the brain as well. It doesn't actually come from
the body part.
Yeah. So we had to kind of just teach you that movement was going to be okay. And I would never stop somebody on the first rep, because it's probably going to, if the rehab exercise is right, it's probably going to be a little bit uncomfortable on that first rep. And then you did 2 or 3 more, and it was like, oh.
Yeah, I did that first one. It hurt like hell, and it wasn't very pretty to look at, I don't think. And the only thing that was going through my brain at the time was, she's going to make me do this again.
Yeah.
I know she's going to make me do this again.
Exactly. But then you do, and you actually, that second set, the next set of 5 that you do is even better still, because you've showed your body and your brain that it's okay. And that signal of, oh, look, this is getting blood to the area. This actually feels quite good. We quite like this movement. And also your brain will go, we need to do this movement. That all starts to connect together. And those new neural pathways are created that will help with the rehab journey moving forward as well.
So talking about the rehab journey moving forward.
Yeah.
Well, no, for everybody, really. Talking about, I'm just turning this into a free session now. Yeah. Talking about for rehab for everybody. You're coming out of an injury. Yeah. The psychological impact of an injury can be quite massive. Yeah. How does someone help themselves get over that and work their way through that journey?
So that's where that we can get ahead of the psychological part. The earlier you come, that's the biggest thing, because like I was saying, the last thing we want to do is to stop you, not just because of the event that's coming or the physical benefits of your training, but actually because I know, and other physios or sports therapists or strength coaches will know, that it's hugely important to your psychological well-being to continue to move, and pain is very detrimental to our psychological well-being, so we want to try and avoid that and limit that as much as we can. So psychologically, it's about coming to a sports injury assessment and treatment is about finding what you can do. That's the biggest thing. It's not about what you can't do. And it would be ringing alarm bells for me if you went somewhere and they were telling you can't do this, can't do this, can't do this, because that's just a really negative approach. It's about, okay, right, we can't run the way that we want to at the moment, but that's our goal. So again, that's the goal. Let's work back from that. And what can we tolerate at the moment? You can bike at the moment. Let's get you out on the bike. You can do hard. You might be able to do some turbo sessions that are hard without increasing the symptoms or anything like that, which is really good. And then it's about restoring that belief in yourself and your body. So the single leg step up is a perfect example, because the first one you go, oh, I don't think I can do this. I don't know. It's going to be wobbly. It's going to be painful. It's going to be all over the place. Oh, yeah, it was all of those things. I predicted it was going to be all of those things. She's making me do it again. Oh, hang on, that one was a bit better. Already, you're building yourself up. And the difficulty comes with, unfortunately, a lot of the time, rehab isn't a linear process, and we will have setbacks. Pain might increase slightly. You might accidentally trip, or you had to do some, run after a kid suddenly, and it actually was too much of a sudden movement for the injury to be able to tolerate, and it's set you back a bit. But take confidence from the fact that we've progressed already, and it's only, it might be 3 steps forward, 2 steps back, but it's only 2 steps back. We won't have gone all the way back.
Yeah.
So yeah, and it's about, again, I think that the biggest thing psychologically that anybody should be bigging you up with is finding what you can do. Just always focus on those things that you are able to do, and the goal, the ultimate, you have that end goal, which might be to run another ultra, but before that we want to get you running continuously for 5k or for 30 minutes or whatever that might be. Once you get to that, you'll have such a boost, because you'll remember when you finished that half marathon and you had to be carried basically to the car because you were hobbling, and you go, I can't believe I've just run, for 30 minutes.
Yeah, and you're right about building that series of confidence points almost, isn't it? Because, for me now, initially, every time the pain got worse, I convinced myself that it was getting worse. Now, when it's irritated after I've done a run, or irritated after I've done the weights, or I went to catch you when you tripped down a bank the other day, and it feels like it's irritated. Yeah, that was that moment where I did move without thinking. I'm now just like, that's okay. It's just tomorrow it'll be fine again, or in a few hours it'll be fine again, because it's getting better every time. You build that series of confidence milestones, I think.
And it helps going to see someone, I've been seeing you at sort of 4-week intervals, which is great. And sometimes when, I know you saw some of my colleagues at the start as well, and when I've seen people from the acute stage where I might have needed to see them every week or every 2 weeks, to then every 4 weeks, to then every 6 weeks, it's really helpful, because we have notes. So we basically keep a rehab diary for you. We can say, look, when you first came in and I assessed you, you couldn't actually lift your leg off the floor, and now your rehab program is set for you to run a 2-hour easy run at the weekend. So
do you remember that phone call you got when I did my first run that Daisy had sent me? And it was like I did a mile down the lane and I rang you and was
you were
like,
very unhappy.
I was very unhappy. I think I sent you an email, didn't I? Saying, are you sure I should be doing
this? Are you sure
this
this is right? And that's, again, I think it's really important to have somebody on your side. I am fully on your side. My goal is to get you better. That's completely my goal, and to support you through that. And, that's a real boost if you've got someone in your corner. Although from a business point of view, it probably makes sense to keep you injured. It's actually my aim is to get you better and to get you running completely pain-free. And that, I will constantly be working towards that. And the structures I put in place for that come from a background of knowing these types of injuries, knowing what works, but also with you and that feedback from you. Oh, it felt like this. Do you think that's okay? Yep, that's fine. Keep going. Oh, okay, let's change that up.
I think that's the thing, isn't it? Especially with confidence. If you've been doing running, I mean, I know I've on longer runs I've fallen over, I've tripped or something like that, and then the next week when I try and do a long run, I'm on the same track. It's like, I'm so scared of this track because I fell here. So it must be the same if you've had an injury and you're starting to run again. I feel like I've never had a serious injury since I've been running, but I feel like I would be one of those people who would suddenly be so scared to go out for those longer runs if I'd had the same injury that you'd had. I think I'd be shitting my pants.
Well, I think that's an important topic, isn't it? Because I mean, we've probably had enough of talking about me, but you only started running July 2021 because we were hiking in the Beaujolais, and I said to you, I think running would suit your mindset. So your athletic age, you've done a lot of hiking, but your athletic age when it comes to running is relatively young. You've never had an injury that has stopped you from running. No. You very rarely get DOMs. You seem to be incredibly robust and even resistant to illness. It's annoying as fuck, to be honest. But what should someone in your mid-40s who's just started running, what are the important things that someone like that should be doing to prevent an injury?
Because I wanted to come back to that. So to talk to my girlfriends who I hike with and say, no, I couldn't do that because I don't want to get injured and stuff. What can I, when I'm hiking with my girlfriends, what can I say to them to put their mind at ease? Because if you're coming to something like this at a later stage of life, I know it can be a little bit more risky, but how can I make them feel better about starting something like that?
By knowing that you are actually benefiting your health, your long-term health, your longevity in life. It's got nothing to do with performance from a, racing point of view. Yeah. It's about what can we do to make ourselves the most robust and solid and powerful versions of ourselves for now, but also for when we're 80, 90 years old. And that comes from exposing yourself to different types of stress. Like it's quite nice we've come kind of full circle on that. But you're running, you're hiking, brilliant. All of those things are really, really good. Strength training, there it is, is obviously is going to be really important. It's directly linked to improved bone health. We can't ignore the science on that. It really is there. It increases tendon strength, ligament strength, muscular strength. It doesn't make you bulky, it makes you more robust.
Right.
So I know with women in particular and runners in particular, a big concern of strength training is that you're going to end up looking like Arnie.
Wouldn't mind looking that stacked.
Some people that's a good thing. But actually, what it's doing on the inside that's the biggest thing. And by doing a bit of strength work, and that could be Pilates, yoga, Zumba for some people, HIIT classes, the local body pump class. It might be personal training sessions, whatever that looks like for you, or in your living room, body weight only. That's fine, but it's making you the best version of yourself for the longest time. I'm not saying that if you do all of these things you won't ever get injured. The likelihood is we will all have some form of injury, but it's the severity, how quickly you come back from that injury will depend on all of those things that you've put in place before. And also, I think once you've experienced the benefits of it, the same with running. And for the women that you work with or walk with, they've experienced the benefits of hiking. All it would take, is, well, should we just jog this little section?
Yeah.
And then you realise, hang on a minute, if we run, we do the same thing, but a little bit faster. And it's just, again, building those positive pathways. It's the same for, the format for injury rehab, for strength training, for running, actually is quite simple, and it follows a very similar sort of set of steps. But it's just applying those and being consistent.
Yes. Consistency.
Yeah.
I'm glad to hear that yoga. So if I'm doing my yoga once a week and my HIIT sports in the park once a week, and then one of James's weight barbell thingies, that's enough, huh?
Definitely.
Nailed it.
But just make sure that you're getting that you don't want to be doing those 3 things exactly the same session every single week. You want to make sure that there's some change in the exercises that you're doing, some increase in the reps and some increase in the weight.
Yoga and
has anyone ever mentioned progressive overload to you before? Maybe.
I can't remember off the top of my head.
It has to come from the right people. My husband pays other people to get this kind of information.
Awesome. So yoga and HIIT are always different every week. And then with the weights, we do similar exercises, but the weights do go up.
Yeah, all the repetitions.
I do the reps, and then when I get to 12 reps, I go back down to 6, add a bit more weight, and then go back up.
Great.
So it does change.
That's my inbuilt progressive overload.
That's your progressive
6 to 12.
overload. Yeah.
I like a 6 to 12 rep
6 to
range
12,
myself.
exactly.
I'm a big fan of that.
Because before, James had me doing 3 weight sessions a week, and then I had my yoga, and I also had my HIIT. But I always skived off at least 2 of James's weight thingies.
And I do think it's quite important to say, that the gym is not for everybody, like I was saying. And actually, it's about finding what is enjoyable to you.
Yes.
Then it will happen consistently.
That's the thing, huh?
Yeah, always. I mean, that's the thing with everyone I think I speak to is if someone wants to try and start getting more active, find the thing you love and do that.
Find your bliss.
If you think you need to go to the gym and just walk on a treadmill and you get bored of it, you won't do it anymore.
People always say to me, "Oh, I know you think I should run. I know, but I just find it so boring." And I go, "Okay, that's totally fine. I don't think you should run. I don't think everybody should run. I think it's great. I love it. And a lot of people I know who think they didn't like it, started it and enjoyed it, but it's not for everybody. It shouldn't be for everybody. There are so many other things. One of my brothers tried running over lockdown, as I think a lot of people did. Didn't really get into it, but knew he always loved cycling. And it was like, well, cycle. Yeah. And he loves cycling, and he's a brilliant cyclist. And now that's what he does. But just didn't really get the running bug. And that's totally fine.
Yeah.
I think we full circled that quite nicely.
It did. That was good.
We went
Yeah.
from start to finish, and we finished where we started, which was nice, just with a lot more information in the middle.
Oh, I did have one really weird question. Maybe I can ask this now, or maybe off air. I don't know. Go
for it.
My 10K a day challenge, and my legs don't hurt. Now, I'm also a writer, so throughout this summer holiday period, I've also been writing a book, like thousands of words every day, sitting down. So when I'm not running, I have a funny back pain underneath my shoulder blade. As soon as I start running, all pain disappears. As soon as I stop running, pain comes back. What's that?
You're using this as a free consultation, aren't you? Yeah, hang on a second.
Is it normal to have pain elsewhere and then it goes when you're exercising?
Yeah, movement, blood flow to the air, anything that keeps us still for really long periods of time is not good, really, because we tend to, you'll find you hold tension in that position it's a repetitive thing.
Standing desk. I keep saying standing desk. You write lying down.
But a mixture, but actually not just a standing desk, a combination of the two, because people can stand badly. But standing badly is not the right word, but stand in ways that can cause problems as well. So it's actually a combination. The best thing to do is not do anything for long periods of time. Again, there's a whole other podcast about sedentary work styles, but if you can set a timer for sort of 30 minutes, get up, have a little stretch. That's all it would take, is to just 30 seconds even of moving slightly in a different position. I know writers tend to get in, once you're in the zone, you're not moving. So, I mean, it's good because you do your yoga and you do your running and things like that. But I would, if you're feeling that pain coming on, try and do something about it then. Think about moving, doing some yoga stretches, even just walking to make a cup of tea or something like that is just different from what you're doing. Yoga, the Pilates balls are really good for sitting on and doing work because they constantly move. They're forcing you to kind of keep a little bit of movement going, and sometimes that can be, again, it's quite hard to do that all the time. But
I just thought it was really funny how, like, this last couple of weeks, my back's been like, it's really, really painful. But then as soon as I'm out running, nothing. Everything goes away.
Your blood flow increases. And part of that, it will just be, you know, the mindset of, I'm stressed, I'm working, I'm writing.
Yeah.
And, I'm running in beautiful areas and I love it. And look at me and I'm not,
And this is always a time of year where France shuts down, so you haven't had your yoga classes all of August, half of July. You haven't had your HIIT sessions all of August, half of July, because they only do them term time. Yeah. So, you know, it's probably a combination of a lack of different type of movement.
I mean, I have been, because I have arbitrarily set myself this challenge, I have been super careful with warm-ups before running. I've done a lot of yoga style, dynamic stretching and stuff before running. Mobilizing all of my joints before I run, doing 10-20 minutes of yoga a couple of times a week, because I have been like, this is silly, you're going to injure yourself. So I've been trying to prehab before doing my challenges. I love yoga. That's something I need to do more of. I don't do enough of that in my training, and every time I do it, I go, I don't know why I don't do this more often. But again, it's variety. It's not that everybody should do yoga, and if you do yoga, you won't get injured. It's not as simple as that. It's not as simple as if you strength train, you won't get injured, as you know, James.
I approve of that.
Yeah, it's
a bit too reductive. Yeah.
But you know, all of these things will make a difference long term to how you move and how you feel. And things like yoga are quite good for indicating where there might be some tight spots and maybe some problematic areas creeping in. And again, same with the single leg work, if you're doing some split squats and you go, wow, I've got no strength in my left leg, but my right leg I could do 20 reps, that would be an indicator that maybe something needs a little bit of attention.
Yeah, I've always found that really funny in yoga because you've got like two halves of your body. If you're doing standing leg poses on one leg, you have to do the other. My left side is way stronger for balance and maintaining a posture than my right side, even though I'm right-handed. Yeah. It's very strange.
Yeah, that is strange.
I'm finished now.
Oh, good. Well, I think that was really enjoyable and interesting, but we've now got to the most important part of the podcast, which is where we ask all of our guests to add a song to the Get Out in It playlist on Spotify, something that they train to, use for motivation, or just enjoy in general. What is your song going to be, Daisy Peters?
I've been stressing about this, and I was listening to the conversation, but I was also thinking about what song I was going to put on. I had one. And my initial thought was going to be Groove Armada, Super Styling.
Yeah, good choice.
Oh, nice. Yeah.
I train to that a lot, and it's a go-to on the Ultra playlist. But I think my absolute favourite, that, again, I don't know why, I just have a real thing for it, is High Wire by the Rolling Stones.
Oh, yeah, nice.
So that it's my warm-up song. I remember listening to it on repeat when I was warming up for a half marathon in Carden Woods in the winter, and when I had an ultra in March, and then I did a 12-hour run recently in Plymouth, a 5-mile loop, but do it as many times as you can in 12 hours.
Sounds horrific.
Yeah, it was. Yeah. There's a 24 and a 36 hour, so I did the 12, but it was about 50 miles in, and the wheels started to fall off a little bit, and I played this song, and I think that it just switched. I was like, yeah, I could run forever again. 10 miles later I did stop, but so yeah, that High Wire, the Rolling Stones.
We will add High Wire by the Rolling Stones to the playlist.
Yeah, and if you want to just chuck Groove Armada on there as well. Then.
Maybe I'll have that as my addition this week, because we both add one each week anyway.
Yeah.
So maybe because I do like Groove Armada a lot. That reminds me of my days living in Bristol.
Yeah.
So where can people find you on the internet if they want to find out more about you? Reach out, make an appointment, get an MOT.
Yeah, an MOT, love it. So as you said, I'm at Mount Kelly Physiotherapy. I'm there once a week. So you can find me through the Mount Kelly Physio website. My diary is on there, so you're able to book in with me through that. I'm also at NL Fitness, which is the gym, and I have a little clinic there as well. I mainly work with people in the gym because I like to get people up and moving as much as possible. So you can find me through NL Fitness. But for social media, it's DRP_sports rehab. And yeah, I'm happy to be in touch with anybody that needs it. I'm social media is not my strong point. It's something I'm working on, but I post a lot about things I do in my life as well, and interesting content and things like that. So yeah,
nice.
That's where to find me.
All the links in the show notes.
We'll put all the links in the show notes, for this week. And thank you so much for joining us. It was
Thank you for having me. Really great to be here.
Fascinating conversation. Thank you so much. The debrief.
The emphasis was correct, I feel.
Okay.
That flew by.
It did.
What did you think of Daisy?
I like her a lot. I also really enjoyed the giant pile of cakes that we had, because we did a podcast all together, all in the same room, which is quite nice. So we fueled our hike with a big old plate of cakes. But I thought that Daisy was absolutely fascinating, and I think it was a really good moment to speak to someone like her, considering the journey that you've been on over the past couple of months with your rehab sitch.
Yeah, it was the first ever in-person podcast we've done, so we did put on quite the buffet. Yeah. A few cakes, a few chewy meerkats, and a bit of coffee. It was all very nice. There's a few meerkats left. I'll be chomping my way through them tonight. And yes, it was nice to be able to talk to Daisy, but to be able to put it in the context of the journey that I've been on, because it relates to all of us, really. You know, some of the mistakes I made and some of the learnings I've taken from my injury that I will carry with me now going forward as I get fitter and stronger again. We can all relate to that. We can all relate to the feelings of, as soon as I go and see somebody, they're going to tell me I need to stop running. Yeah. Or what to do when you've got a niggle, how to approach that. And then also the psychological impact of rehab and trying to get back to where you were. I think it's something we've all been through.
Yeah, to a greater or lesser extent. I mean, obviously I've never been injured, so I couldn't relate to that at all. But I was really glad that we talked about what to do to not get injured, and how to get people excited about going outdoors and doing stuff outside without the fear of getting injured. Like, we talked a little bit about some friends I have who are like, I could never do that because, if I fell over, it would be bad. And I get that. It's a real fear. I have that fear every time I go out for a run. What if I fall over and smash my face? It's normal. But I think it was really important for me to hear that the more I run, the more I'm active, the less likely I am to get an injury in the first place, especially if I vary my activities. And that was also a really key point I liked hearing from Daisy as well, was the fact that it's great if you find an activity that you love doing and you want to do it all the time. That's awesome, but variety is the spice of life.
Yeah, and not only are you less likely to be injured in the long run, you're also less likely to have a heart attack. You're less likely to have a stroke. You're less likely to get dementia. All these things, that being active, being outside, the benefits that bring to our lives. You're less likely to get a range of different cancers. There's a huge amount of benefit to being active, being outside and challenging yourself in a way that you enjoy, so that it's sustainable and you're consistent with it. Because if you don't, Oh yeah, it's bad. I think it's bad for my knees. It ain't bad for your knees, bro.
Running's not bad for your knees. Not running is bad for your knees. Just run. Run for your knees. Also, there was something else I enjoyed. What else did I enjoy about that talk? I liked the fact that yoga is an important part of my strength week. That's cool. That made me very happy. I'm glad I don't have to do 3 weight sessions a week. I'm glad I can have yoga as a strength session and my HIIT class as a strength session and then weights as a strength session. That was cool. I was glad for that.
I just bit the head off a meerkat.
It was brutal. There's blood everywhere. It's a fucking bloodbath.
It was really nice. So, off the back of that, do you think we should go and have a coffee?
I mean, I definitely need something bitter to counteract all of the sweet cakes that we've been chomping our way through this afternoon. So yes, let's go and get a coffee.
Let's go get a coffee.
The weekly roast. Is that it? All right, it's my turn this week. And I actually, unlike you, I've actually gone out and bought some coffee for our weekly roast this week. And it is from the Cornish Coffee company. And I picked this up because the packet is yellow and black. It's got a warning sign on it. And the name of this coffee is Stupidly Strong. And it's... They've actually put a little bit of a warning on it to say that if it's, it's really, really strong, so you've been warned kind of thing. So I'm quite excited.
Yeah, I mean, I'm slightly irritated that you've come to Devon and bought a Cornish fucking coffee.
It's the same place, no?
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this Cornish coffee is well known in these parts, and they've branded it up nicely, Stupidly Strong, and I'm keen to find out what it's like later.
Toe curling and eye watering, apparently.
Well, there you go.
Volcano erupting loveliness.
And it is the Cornish Coffee Company is a family-run endeavour. We do know that, so
we like that.
We like that.
We do like
we do
that.
like those sort of things. So
we don't want the big chain brands.
Well, I'm going to have an oat milk latte.
Oh, I'm going to have an oat milk latte too. Yeah, I'm a little bit scared about what this is going to do. Although I have got a 10K... What am I doing this evening? It's an event. What's this event
You're
I'm
doing
doing?
a fell run.
Yeah, so I think I need this caffeine to help get me up. Apparently it's a 5K climb and then a 5K descent. So I think I'm going to need this caffeine hit to get me up that 5K climb.
Yeah, because Dartmoor is now a designated part of the fell running championships or whatever.
Ooh.
They lobbied for it, and so they've got that now. And Daisy has pointed you in the direction of a fell run.
She did, because I love the fact that Daisy is also an ultra runner, and we could all bond on our mental long distance running things that we do.
Exciting times. So what do we do now? Let's be honest, isn't it?
Let's have a let's be honest moment. Oh, I've got some honesty coming up. Yeah.
Let's be honest. Okay, well, I'll go first because everything was going in the right direction and still is going in the right direction when it comes to trend over time, I think. But I had a bad run yesterday. I left the run till later in the day. I'd eaten a big lunch. And I think, pushing a bit harder at the park run on the Saturday left me a little bit tender. And I just had a bad run. I had a grim run. I didn't enjoy it. I wasn't having fun. I did the 5K. But I felt slow. I felt cumbersome. And I didn't feel like I had any fluidity. I'm hoping that my next run, which will be tomorrow, will refine some of that form. But as we discussed with Daisy, through the process of this injury and the process of rehabilitating this injury, I've learnt to be able to draw a line better than I originally used to be able to. Now I can say, okay, that's just part of the getting better journey that I'm on. I can draw a line under that bad run and think about the next one to come and know that my body's healing and it will keep healing, and that trend over time will keep going in the right direction.
Yeah.
So that's my let's be honest. Let's be having you, Maria Herring.
All right, so my let's be honest is also from my yesterday's run. I think both of us were in a bit of a weird headspace yesterday. I'm still doing my 10k a day challenge, although I've been kind of my 10k a day challenge is more like an average of 10k a day, because on the park run day I just did 5k. On the Sunday I did 15k. The Friday before the park run I also did 15k. And I did my run on Monday and that was fine, although my legs felt a little bit tired after the weekend and that coastal that beating from the coastal path that they took. But yesterday I couldn't find the joy. In my head I was just, the whole time I was just thinking, when will this be over? And the distance didn't seem to be ticking away very fast, and time had just slowed down to an absolute crawl. So yesterday's run, even though I had a bit of a break because I did it in the evening, I just wasn't in it.
And these things do happen, don't they? And it's when you've taken on a challenge like you have, this fatigue will start to kick in. What you need to not tell yourself is, this is how I feel now.
Yeah.
You know, that's how you felt then.
Yeah.
And the next run is an entirely different thing on its own. It's a standalone event. Give yourself the room and space in your head to feel good on that run, rather than telling yourself, this is how runs feel now and they will feel until the end of this challenge.
Yeah, because when I woke up this morning, I was thinking, I can't run today. Can't do it. And I don't think I could have done it this morning. I'm really, really glad that Daisy told us about this fell run this evening, because I think I need something different to kind of reset my headspace.
I think a structured run will give you structure as well.
Yeah.
An event like this will give you some structure around the run. And it'll take the decision as to whether you carry on or not out of your hands, because it's an event. You won't just be like, oh, why am I doing this? Oh, shall I do 5k? Shall I do 10k? Shall I do 15k? This is a prescribed distance that you've got to go and do, start to finish. How about it?
Yeah, exactly. And so I'm quite excited for that one tonight, because even though I feel fine today, I feel less fatigued today than I did yesterday. I was still thinking, oh, that lane outside your house is so long. But no, I think with this race that I'm just randomly doing tonight, because I just found out about it, I think that was a good move, I reckon.
I think so. I fully endorse this, and I will look forward to cheering you on.
Aw, thanks, James Bale.
Should we go and put some music on and forget about it?
Let's do it. Turn it up.
That'll probably do, won't it?
All right, I'm gonna go first for music.
Roger that.
Okay, because I've been in Devon for a couple of weeks, and last week we went to the cinema to watch the Barbie movie, which, you know, just as a cheeky aside, is fucking awesome. So pop along to the cinema and watch that movie. But for my music choice this week, I've gone for the end credit song for that, because I love a bit of film music on a long run. So I've chosen the Barbie World song by Nicki Minaj and Ice Spice with Aqua, which kind of sounds like a delicious drink cocktail.
It does sound quite nice, doesn't it? You were playing it earlier. I must say the music's not really my style, but whatever. Roll with it.
Roll with it. It was a good movie. It's quite funky. It's got a good beat.
Yeah, cool.
I'm going to play that tonight when I do my fell run.
I must say I thoroughly enjoyed the film. I thought it was really, really good fun.
The film was brilliant.
Really good fun. And a nice bit of a social commentary as well.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm always up for that.
Love it.
And also as an addition to how good the film was, I like seeing all the little individual meltdowns on social media from certain aspects of society about this film, because, you know,
yeah,
I think rings true for too many people.
It does. It's quite the trigger for some very fragile personalities, I think.
Yeah, I believe so. So it's my choice, which is I'm also going down the film rabbit hole, because one of my favourite films that I've seen in the last... Favourite two films that I've seen in the last few years is the animated Spider-Man films. Into the Spider-Verse and Across the Spider-Verse. Thoroughly enjoyed those. And the theme song from the first one is What's Up Danger by Blackway with Black Caviar. And I particularly enjoy that song. It's a great one to run to. It really is. It's got a hell of a beat. And if you haven't seen those two animated Spider-Man films with Miles Morales and the Spider-Verse, get out there and watch them because they are amazing.
They're astonishing. Yeah, I mean, I'm not normally a comic book film person. Oh, but those two movies, the animation, fucking hell, it's exquisite. It's such good storytelling.
It really is. The animation is amazing. Second to none, I would say. Having been to see the second one in the cinema, it instantly went into the conversation of one of the best films I've ever seen at the cinema. It's like being on a roller coaster. It grabs you and it carries you along. And there weren't any let up. It was really well paced. Thoroughly enjoyed it. Is that about it from us this week?
That is about it for us. I have to go and get ready for my impromptu race now.
If you want to find out more about us, head to www.getoutinit.events. There's loads of info on there, and you can sign up for the newsletter, download the Personal Development Friend, and book a free consultation with us to discuss your health and fitness and a roadmap to get you there. If you like the podcast, please go and leave us a review on iTunes because we really appreciate it, and it really helps the algorithm boost us up the charts and gets more eyes to see what we're doing and generates more downloads.
And it's also nice to have more people come along on a hike and a chat with us. So 5-star those reviews and come and join us.
Indeed. If you leave us a review, then we will give you a shout out on the podcast. Promise.
Yes. All right. Ciao for now.
Cheerio.
Bye-bye.
Thanks for hitting the trails with us this week. We'll meet you back here next Monday for more news, more views, more nature.
All the links for our socials are in the show notes. Find and follow us on Facebook, Insta, YouTube and Twitter. You can subscribe to our newsletter from our website for all the latest updates and camp plans. You get a fun free gift when you sign up.
Leave a review on your podcast app. It's really easy and really helps us out.
And if you've got any friends who could do with getting out in it, then bring them along to next week's outdoor adventure. We'd love to have you all with us.
Catch you next week. Cheerio.